right now we're dealing with this whole big, potential overthrow of Roe v. Wade. Now, as I'm sure everybody by now has already heard, there was a draft proposal written by the Supreme Court saying that there was no basis for this or no basis for that, saying all kinds of nonsense things like saying that there is no history in the United States of, no history of abortion being a right or enshrined by law. Which is kind of weird because slavery was allowed by law and there's a history of that, so why isn't that still legal? Kind of argument. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense. But this has caused a great uproar. Someone leaked this, and they say they've got it reduced down to about 50 possible people who could have done it. And as a result, they say they will, and that they are confident that they will find out the person responsible for this. Now, this has caused a bit of a political upheaval, not just because the ruling contravenes basic rights over yourself, your own individual person, etc., but the fact that something from as sensitive a court as the Supreme Court has been leaked to the public. And this is something that has not happened in modern history, say at least before the 20th century at least. And this is a pretty significant thing. And so far it's turning into a political nightmare with both sides accusing each other, the Democrats accusing the Republicans of doing it so that the justices cannot change their minds later on. Now they're already locked into this. And the Republicans are accusing the Democrats of having leaked it to try to whip up anti-Republican sentiment. And quite frankly, it could have been either one. Either one of those possibilities could be true. But what's really interesting here is that this is now going to be a major issue of the midterms. Now, this was scheduled to come out like next month or the month after the actual official ruling, not this draft ruling as they're calling it. And now this is going to be a major issue for midterm elections. Now, in at least one place that just had a midterm by-election or what have you, the name of the place escapes me at the time, but it just took place yesterday. It said that the traditionally Republican place has now turned Democrat because there's an overwhelming public support for accessibility to abortions. That this is something women should have a right to. I mean, the actual argument here is completely nonsense. There's no actual argument against abortion that doesn't involve the Bible or some other religious text or religious belief. And given that there was supposed to be a separation between church and state, it should be quite obvious which way the court is supposed to rule. But as you can see, we've seen some of the mental gymnastics here saying, well, there's no history of abortion being a right in America, so therefore it shouldn't be. Which is complete nonsense, because there's a lot of things that there were no rights for in history, like same-sex couples, etc. So by their logic, is that supposed to be banned as well? This was supposed to be, maybe one of the better Supreme Courts, at least partially. Because every one of these justices previously stated on the record under oath that this was already a settled matter. Access to abortion was already a right that that women should have. So you've basically got the Supreme Court stacked with liars. People who've just suddenly decided to change their mind, which means essentially they lied during their confirmation hearings. But that's a separate issue altogether. Now, it's not, the history of available abortions and socialism is obvious. This has always been available to women under socialism, with a small exception of that being Stalin. And then it was actually brought back later But that's the argument. Some people like to say, oh, well, Stalin didn't like abortion, blah, blah, blah. And that's supposed to be an argument for being against abortion, when that has nothing to do with the substance of the matter whatsoever. But the point I am making here is that the tradition of socialist countries has been to allow it, to give women autonomy over their bodies. There's all kinds of reasons that a woman would want to have an abortion. Many of them being medical reasons. Even an entropic pregnancy, one that will kill the mother, guaranteed. If she does not do something about it, she will die. Even that is not being allowed by certain lawmakers in certain states. To the point where the fetus cannot survive at all, no matter what you do. But the woman will die no matter what. And still, it is not allowed. I mean, this is simply completely nonsensical. It's to the point where this shouldn't even be up for debate. This isn't something that should even be discussed. This is like entry-level nonsense. And we do very clearly see that the main drive for this has been essentially the evangelical wing of the United States, and particularly the Republican Party. People who are trying to force their religion on other people. And that's another video for another day. Well, one of the things that I found interesting was that when this ruling was made, the Conservative Party of Canada put out a statement telling its members not to comment on this. Now, the reason should be fairly obvious, because Canada is far more liberal-leaning than the United States is, and that the even larger majority of the Canadian public believes that women should have access to this kind of healthcare, and it is healthcare. And that would make the Conservative Party look bad when they're already going through a image issue, having supported the fascist truckers movement, or AstroTurf movement, which should be better to call that one, and fascists being the one that supported it. This has already negatively impacted the reputation of the Conservative Party, and this would damage it even more, given that we are now getting so close to a federal election. In the meantime, the current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is doing something right for once. He's trying to make it so that there's a law that says you can have an abortion. Now, keep in mind, most of U.S. law, at least with regards to the Constitution and whatnot, says that there is no thing against it. So there's no reason why you can't get it, but nothing enshrined as a right that you can get it. That's the difference that Canada is making. They're trying to make it so that access to abortion and abortion-type services are specifically labeled as a right that you get, not something that's, essentially there's no law against it, so you can do it. This is something that will be protected under law. And hopefully this can be passed before the federal election so that at least women can deal with, having access to that kind of health care should the worst happen and the Conservative Party get in and decide to suddenly do a Trump-style government, which by all what we've seen so far from the Canadian government, seen from the Conservative Party, is exactly what it is that they're trying to do. My final message here is that this shouldn't even be up for discussion. This was settled a long time ago. Women's right to abortion, to be able to see a doctor regarding these things, to be able to make that medical decision for themselves, is something that is a right that was acknowledged a long time ago. This is something that should be a dead issue that is not discussed anymore. Yet, it continues to be discussed to this day and continues to be fought against to this day. And it again shows some of the very, very backward notions that the United States has when it comes to even basic human rights. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.